Today we're going to be looking at a poem from the Love and Relationships cluster. We're going to be looking at Before You Were Mine by Carol Ann Duffy. Have you ever imagined what your parents must have been like before you were born? Were they naughty? Were they rebellious? Were they quite well behaved? That is basically what this poem is about. It's a daughter reflecting on her mother's life before she was born, and then also thinking about her life after she was born and during her kind of childhood. It explores how the daughter feels almost guilty for the fact that she ruined her mum's youth by being born, and she imagines the fun her mum must have had as a young woman. So there is this implicit suggestion of, I ruined your life by taking away your beauty and your youth and your joy, that permeates throughout the poem, while simultaneously working as an ode for her mother, because she obviously really admired her. Let's read it. I'm 10 years away from the corner you laugh on with your pals, Maggie McGeaney and Jean Duff. The three of you bend from the waist, holding each other or your knees, and shriek at the pavement. Your polka dot dress blows round your legs, Marilyn. I'm not here yet. The thought of me doesn't occur in the ballroom with the 1,000 eyes, the fizzy movie tomorrows the right walk home could bring. I knew you would dance like that. Before you were mine, your ma stands at the close with a hiding for the late one. You reckon it's worth it. The decade ahead of my loud, possessive yell was the best one, eh? I remember my hands in those high-heeled red shoes, relics. And now, your ghost clatters toward me over George Square till I see you, clear as scent, under the tree with its lights. And whose small bites on your neck, sweetheart? Cha-cha-cha, you teach me the steps on the way home from mass, stamping stars from the wrong pavement. Even then, I wanted the bold girl, winking in Portobello, somewhere in Scotland, before I was born. That glamorous love lasts, where you sparkle and waltz and laugh before you were mine. We're going to work our way through this poem. I'll take you through bit by bit and explain exactly what's going on. And along the way, I'm going to select a few of my favorite, juiciest quotations. And by juicy, I mean quotations that have interesting language devices that you could really give different interpretations about in your exam, and interesting words that you can zoom into. We're going to talk about structure so that if this poem comes up in your exam, you can write me some long, analytical, detailed paragraphs about it. Let's start from the beginning. The poem starts, I'm 10 years away from the corner you laugh on. So it begins in the present tense, I am, as if the speaker is watching her mother's life as a young girl. It's like she's there. She's imagining and describing her mum 10 years before she was born. And her mother's standing on a corner, she's laughing. It gives the impression that the speaker feels a physical distance from the mother, and recognizes that her mum was really happy before she was born. She's like laughing in this carefree way. So the opening conveys a sense of loss too, as if the speaker's mother was happy before the speaker's birth, and it implies that she lost that happiness after the speaker was born. The reference to the corner of the pavement, I think, is really interesting, because the corner could be symbolic of her mum being on the brink of adulthood, or just before things changed and life took a different direction. That's clever, isn't it? She says, with your pals, Maggie McGeaney, alliteration in her name, and Jean Duff. The three of you bend from the waist, holding each other or your knees, shriek at the pavement. That specific image of joy, laughter, friendship through the list of names shows that the speaker must have heard about these friends from either the mother or other people. And we've got that informal word, pals, which creates this intimacy between the friends. And isn't it lovely that they're holding each other? It conveys that idea of support. The actions of bending and holding and shrieking kind of reveal that sense of fun. And the speaker has really focused on this image. She's obviously thought about her mum's previous life in great detail. She says, "Your polka dot dress blows around your legs, Marilyn." Now, for those of you who don't know, Marilyn Monroe was an American actress. She might have been a model and a singer as well. She was really famous for becoming one of the most popular sex symbols of the 1950s and early 1960s. And here, the fact that she includes Marilyn's name indicates the speaker's perception of her mother as beautiful and glamorous, like a celebrity. And that polka dot dress is a symbol of an iconic dress that Marilyn Monroe wore, which symbolizes the speaker's mother's fashion, hinting that she was really sexy. And notice the continued use of second person, like the speaker is directly speaking to her mum. It's almost like it's all the things she wanted to say to her mum, but she never got the opportunity to. And she says, "I'm not here yet. The thought of me doesn't occur in the ballroom with the 1,000 eyes, the fizzy movie tomorrows the right walk home could bring." So the speaker emphasizes here that not only was she not born, even the thought of her doesn't occur to her carefree mother at the time. Like children were the last thing on her mind. The speaker's tone remains ambiguous. She tries not to convey any bitterness or jealousy for her mum's life, which was clearly very grand compared to the monotony of traditional motherhood. When she talks about the 1,000 eyes, it represents the numerous male eyes drawn to the mum. So evidently men found her really attractive and took her to the cinema or walked her home to show their interest in her. There is a juxtaposition between the singular personal pronoun me and the thousands of eyes watching her mum, because it makes a speaker seem really insignificant and unimportant. How can she, singular, compete with all of them, all of that attention? And then the speaker not only starts to fantasize about how gracefully her mum would have danced, but she also imagines the beats her mum would have got when she came home late. She says, "I knew you would dance like that. Before you were mine, your ma stands at the close with a hiding for the late one. You reckon it's worth it." Let's analyze this quotation in a bit more detail. The phrase, I knew it. I knew you would dance like that. It's like a certainty in tone, almost as if the speaker is watching the mother dance live. It has a really excited tone. She's celebrating her mum's liberation, her mum's freedom. Also, the fact that she has imagined this world of the past and she believes it. She's watching it, thinking, my mum must have danced like this. And she's like, I knew you would dance like that. The world of her imagination and reality have become blurred. The title, Before You Were Mine, is repeated here. And it's a really possessive phrase, you were mine. It reverses that traditional role of mother and daughter, because usually the child would belong to the parent, not vice versa. She feels protective towards her mother. You are mine. I feel like a different interpretation. It also makes it seem as though the mother lost her identity once she gave birth to her daughter. She became owned by her daughter and lost her sense of self. If we zoom into that temporal phrase, before you were mine, it's basically the speaker acknowledging that there was a shift following her birth. This is what you were like before you were mine, this is what you were like after. So that's the moment that changed everything. The direct address in your and you demonstrates the way that she's fixated with her mother's memory. I actually think direct address, zooming into you or your, or personal pronouns, zooming into me or I, that's a really good way for you to just give yourself some extra analysis marks, because you'll find those words everywhere, and if you can just zoom into them and say something about it, it's a really good way to get some extra marks. Now, where she says ma, that's colloquial. It's informal language, which creates the impression that the speaker desires to form a close bond and a close friendship with her mother. And there's that verb hiding, which is a really old-fashioned term. If you say someone got a hiding, it's like you got a physical punishment, you got a smack. And that kind of juxtaposes the friendship she wishes she had with her mother. It's talking about the more formal and strict relationship she imagines her mum would have had with her grandmother, if that makes sense. There's a declarative phrase, you reckon it's worth it. And that kind of gives you a cheeky glimpse into her mother's rebellion. She's saying, you didn't mind if you got a hiding, you didn't mind if you got a smack, because you valued your freedom more than the discipline you faced when you got home. She then says, the decade ahead of my loud possessive yell was the best one, eh? I find this quotation, it might be my favorite one from the whole poem. I find it really sad. Let's analyze it. The fact that this is a rhetorical question, your life was really great before I came, eh? It symbolizes that the speaker is like seeking reassurance. She's asking a question. She wants to hear that it wasn't true. And that makes it even more tragic for me, because she can never get that answer. If I said to my mum, Mum, I bet you were really happy before I was born. I bet those were the best years of your life, weren't they? My mum would say, no, of course not. You were the best thing that happened to me. Like, she would say, even if it's not true, she would say that. But this speaker never gets to hear that. And therefore, these feelings would always remain unresolved. In a way, this also implies that the mother has passed away, and therefore these feelings never got resolved. She actually has to learn to live with that guilt. The saddest bit for me is the tag of the colloquial eh? I've ruined your life, eh? It creates the impression she's putting on a facade, acting like, oh, it's no big deal, trivializing something that actually really hurts her, but acting like, cash, it's fine. The decade is used for the second time here. This may be suggesting that specifically 10 years before the speaker's birth, the mother had a really great life. But where has she got this information from? Is it from photos? Anecdotes? Did her mum tell her this herself? It's ambiguous, but she seems really obsessed with this idea of it was 10 years before I was born that your life was great. And the juxtaposition of her mother's great life in the earlier sections of the poem with the negative description of the speaker's loud possessive yell clearly reveals the guilt she feels, that she ruined her mum's life. The image she creates of herself as a baby here is one of a demanding and needy infant. The possessive pronoun my displays that she feels completely responsible for what happened to her mother after her birth. And she describes her yell, which, you know, yelling, if you're yelling with someone, it connotes a sense of conflict and fighting. She obviously wasn't easy to handle, or thinks she wasn't easy to handle, and she recognizes that. And then she uses the superlative. She says best. It shows the kind of extreme ways the narrator thinks of people and life, which is still quite childlike. Like, oh, my mum's life before was perfect and after it was ruined. It's all very extreme. There's no room for nuance or complexity between these two binary oppositions. I remember my hands in those high-heeled red shoes, relics, and now your ghost clatters towards me over George Square. So the speaker's imagining, you know, when you're a child, like babies put their hands in shoes. My niece used to do that all the time. So that reference to the high-heeled red shoes is the speaker remembering playing with those shoes as a young child. And she calls them relics, which basically means items from the past. And it's talking about her mother's glamour, her mother's romance. If we zoom into that color imagery, red, you know I love a bit of color imagery, it symbolizes a time when her mum was at the peak of her youth and contentment. I like that image of the speaker playing with those shoes because I think it's a symbol for her desire to be like her mother. She wants to walk in her shoes. And then she says the mother's ghost, which could be interpreted in two different ways. Firstly, it's an acknowledgement that her mum has passed away, ghost. But if she's alive, it makes it seem as though she's unrecognizable compared to how she used to be or how the speaker imagines her to have been. Like the mum is now merely a ghost of the woman that she used to be in the first 3 stanzas. Sad. Therefore, to alleviate her guilt, to make herself feel better, the speaker prefers to escape into the memories of her mum's youth, and she addresses her with, "Till I see you, clear as scent, under the tree with its lights, and who small bites on your neck, sweetheart." Copy this one down. Let's analyze this because something grade 9 is going on here. She says see and scent. She's mixing the senses, and that is a device called synesthesia. Synesthesia has been employed here by the poet to demonstrate the vivid and intricate memories that the speaker has. They're so detailed, she can smell her mum, she can see her in her youth. The speaker longs so passionately for her mum to be like the young woman she imagines that she almost transports herself to that era. And then she says her mum is under the tree. She places her mother next to nature, connoting her nurturing quality and also her strength. The direct address of you and your, I'm going to zoom into here, that indicates a reversal of the traditional maternal relationship. Here, the child is questioning the parent, not the other way around. And the symbol of the light conveys the way her mum radiates joy in that form. And maybe the speaker feels like that glow is missing now. The questions about the small bites, love bites on her mum's neck is, of course, another way of describing her romantic youth. It's playful in its tone rather than being accusatory, almost as if the daughter is admiring her mum and delving into this kind of naughty, rebellious side of her. She's not disapproving it. And that sweetheart is called an endearing epithet. It conveys how much the speaker loves her mum and wishes for a closeness with her that transcends the traditional formality of a parent-child relationship. Then it's the bit that says, cha-cha-cha. You teach me the steps on the way home from mass, stamping stars from the wrong pavement. The cha-cha is a sensual dance with Latin American rhythm that was popular in the 1950s, general knowledge, and it acts here as a reference to the small moments of joy that the speaker experienced with her mum. The time her mum taught her how to dance on the way back from church. And she says, even then, I wanted the bold girl winking in Portobello, somewhere in Scotland, before I was born. The I wanted here conveys that sense of longing and regret. Even when she's dancing with her mum, the speaker can see that something is missing. She wistfully yearns for that girl from the fizzy movie Tomorrows that she dreamed of. And the past tense here reveals that the mother is not the bold girl winking that she once used to be. And she says, the glamorous love lasts where you sparkle and waltz and laugh before you were mine. The poem concludes with the speaker expressing that glamorous love lasts, which implies that the love she got, which was ordinary and monotonous, doesn't last. The mother has transformed from the sparkle and waltz and laugh she once experienced. And there's a triplet here, and polysyndeton. If you don't know what that means, you need to go back to my language devices lesson. It emphasizes how amazing that time was for her mum, and now she's become a more sad and disappointed individual. And we've got that repetition of the title again, Before You Were Mine, because the poem's final words express the speaker's insistence. Before you were mine. She's insisting that her birth undoubtedly is the main reason for her mother's downfall. Now, structurally, the poem is set out in quintains. That's stanzas that are 5 lines long. And that fixed structure of each stanza gives the impression of different images or freeze frames that the speaker carries of her mother. And there's also a cyclical structure, because there's, in the first stanza, the reference to the pavement, and then we end talking about a pavement again. And it demonstrates the speaker's desire for her mother to stay the same. But the direction the mother's life takes is very different. The path she ends up on completely contrasts to the journey that she set out on as a young girl. And that's it. That's a full analysis of Before You Were Mine. However, that's not enough. In your exam, you also need to talk about something called context. In your essay, probably at the end of the paragraphs, you want to mention context. And all that means is you want to explain what was going on during the time the poem was written, or tell me something about the poet's life, and then link that to the message of the poem. Why do you think the poet wrote this poem? What message were they trying to give the reader? Some interesting context points for Before You Were Mine are: Duffy was raised in Scotland before moving to England as a child. She was raised in the 1950s by her parents as a Roman Catholic, which I guess helps to explain the religious references within her work. Duffy's mother died in 2005, about a decade after this poem was written. The poem could be seen as autobiographical, talking about the poet's own mother and her grandmother. The poem was published in 1993, but it's set mainly in the past, in the 1950s. The poem explores the strong conventions of society women were expected to adhere to during the 1950s, like remaining at home, not working, raising their children. Generationally, Duffy would have been separated from her mother by the Second World War, which may have contributed to this perceived distance between them in the mother-daughter relationship. And there you have it. That's everything you need to know about Before You Were Mine. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a like, and don't forget to check out the rest of the videos in this series.